at the back underneath, so I can plug in all my HDMI cables. It's got like 13 different spigots, about $100 bridge item. So you power into that. But now, what did you tell me about the? Where is the best power?
If you plug it in the right side, it's not supposed to spin up because apparently the sensor is too close to the plug or something like that, and it heats up and then just starts spinning the fan crazy.
So what is the correct proper side?
Right-hand side.
Right-hand side. Oh, copy that. Okay, I've been plugging it in the left. So let me. Another gentleman told me to render to the local drive, and I'm thinking I've got Thunderbolt 3. If that's not fast enough for a
that's fine.
An H.264 QuickTime, it's like okay. Let me try that.
No, you totally render over Thunderbolt. That's a good way to do it, as a matter of fact. So you're not doing it on the system drive.
No, that's
and you're charging directly into the Mac. You're not trying to do it through a hub or anything crazy like that.
No, I've been charging through the bridge.
Charge it directly on the right-hand side, and do
that.
everything else.
But then I don't have any power for my HDMI outputs.
All right, I don't know what switch. I don't know what hub you're using, so walk away from that.
You can power
we're going
it through both, and it'll take the USB over the bridge, but then your HDMI will get powered.
I'm sorry, repeat.
So if you put a plug in the bridge and you put a plug in the laptop, it'll take the power from the laptop and then power the bridge.
I just gotta buy a thing. Alex is back. Welcome, Alex.
I'm back. I got a little delayed there because I couldn't find Chris. Chris got moved in my little grid here, and I was like, "Where's Chris? Where's Chris?" So anyway, so welcome to everyone. This is the office hours. I'm Alex Lindsay, and we are starting 30 seconds late. I apologize. I'll be better tomorrow. My only promise is 7 to 7:01, but I try to hit 7 o'clock. So we're getting started here. If you're in, this is your first time and you're in the participants area and you're wondering why are some people in participants and why are some people in panelists, panelists get here a little earlier. We open the doors at 6 Pacific Standard Time, and then we start checking about 6:40 to 6:45. We start checking everybody's mics, looking at their video. So if you think that you've got good internet, video, and audio, or reasonably good video and internet and audio, then come in at 6:40 at the latest, and we'll check you out and possibly bring you in. So there's no other rules of engagement there other than you have to be here a little earlier. Also, we've got the thing to know about questions. If you are new, if you're a participant, ask the questions in the Q&A. Use the chat for discussion. So if you're going to chit chat, do it there. Don't ask questions in the chat because I don't see them. If you're a panel, if you want to ask questions, use the Q&A. And the trick is, come before 7 o'clock and ask your question there, because I open up the show with most of the questions from the Q&A first. So we'll try to work through most of those. If you have comments and you put them in Q&A, I'm going to kind of skip them. It's just harder for me to manage. Also know that the longer your question is, the least chance, the lower chance I'm going to ask it, because I just have a hard time reading them. So if you can keep it to 2 or 3 lines, or maybe 3 or 4 lines at the most, it generally is easier for me to read, and I tend to get to those ones much faster. So just something to think about. I know you want to put context in there, but try to figure out how to make it short, and there's a better chance for me to read it. If you're a panelist, before you raise your Zoom hand, when you come in and you have a burning question, ask that question in the Q&A, then raise your hand. That way we can get that kind of in the list. So take that into account. But otherwise, if you're a panelist and you have a question during the show, new question, raise your Zoom hand, the little blue hand. If you want to add something to what we're talking about at that moment, or ask something there, then raise your physical hand so that I can see it. And that's how I kind of know, there you go. That's how I know that there's someone who wants to contribute about this. But if you raise your Zoom hand, I'll assume that that's a new question as we move forward. So take that into account. Also, we've got a really active Discord. If you want to join the Discord, you just need to be here at 6:30. We distribute somewhere between 6:30 and 6:37 this morning, but typically 6:30-ish. We distribute the link. It lasts 30 minutes. So if you're thinking about it right now, it's probably too late. It lasts 30 minutes, and we're bringing people in kind of slowly as we figure it out. We've got a couple A couple things coming up today. Of course, we're talking in the second hour is oftentimes when we're talking about extras. We're talking about new things that that we're interested in talking about for a whole hour. Today, we're going to talk about camera grids, distortion, lenses, and how they affect compositing, and all kinds of other things that we're doing. So that's a geeky subject. Yesterday, we talked about audio over IP, and before that, we had Elemental actually come and talk about their encoders. So it changes every day. Saturday is our long day. That's 2 days from now. We talk chit chat at 6, and then 7 to 9 we answer questions, and then 9 o'clock I'll be talking about understanding MEs, mix effects for switching. Steve Bays actually is coming in to talk about Final Cut Pro Deep Cut, so things you didn't know about Final Cut Pro. A bunch of us are learning Memo Live together. We're going to send the link out so you can download Memo Live. That'll last until the end of July. And that's with Oliver Breidenbach from actually the founder of Boinks, hangs out with everybody and answers questions and works through those things. So it's great at 11. At noon, we're going to talk about Quixel, which is a Unreal tool. And Nick Jushishin, who's here around here somewhere, is going to be talking to you about how to start generating using photogrammetry and converting it to objects online or real-time objects. And then I'll be talking at 1 o'clock about a bunch of us are going to talk about the ATEM Mini, and ATEM Mini Pro. Just really looking at what can it do, all those things. So anyway, one thing to know is I put the YouTube link in the chat. If you guys want to share it anywhere, anyone you want to show the actual video to, you can do that. Also, if you want to share this, the Zoom link, I'll put it in the chat right now. So that's if you want other people, you think other people would enjoy this as you're watching it, you can use that link to share it with them. You can put it anywhere you want. Anyway, that's it for the announcements. And let me jump into the questions here. Doug Ferguson. You can see Doug got here 6:03. First question. So
the question was not burning though, but it
was, but it's a good question. I'm just saying 6:03. I'm impressed. You got that's the way to do it. So Doug Ferguson said, "What do you do with competitors in your same market that have poisoned the well, meaning they have set prices so low that potential clients won't even talk to you?" So there's always going to be people that can do it for cheaper. The question is whether they can do it well for cheaper. I mean, I think that's usually the process, and part of why, and other people can chip in here, but part of why I wanted to create a group like this and wanted to talk to people is how do we bring our overall quality up? How do we understand what we're doing better? How do we improve? Because I think that I don't compete on price ever. It's just not what I try to work on, that I know more, that I have a better relationship, that I'm able to, execute those logistics better. There's always clients out there that are just looking for the lowest price, and usually those are your hell clients. Like they are gonna, the hardest clients to work for, and I recommend taking on some of them because you'll respect the other clients better after that. But the other ones is that they also test you. You can learn a lot by doing some of these. I think the ones that are the hardest to work with typically are nonprofits because they have a lot of free labor. Nonprofits have a lot of volunteers, and because they have a lot of free labor, they don't tend to have the same respect for people's time, and so they'll just drive you into the ground. And so the where labor isn't expensive, oftentimes you end up with people who just don't think about, oh, that would take a long time to do. And so but I still do a lot of work with nonprofits because they have interesting things that they want to do, and they're actually doing something that I think is useful in the world. And so it's not that I don't work with them, but I know what I'm getting into when I start doing it. So but I think that a lot of times you just really have to look at how you're going to better your game. And I compete, the things that we do, number one is that I spend a lot of time really explaining what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it. We work with logistics. We work with our clients to really figure out how to do a great job, not just how to do what they asked, but how to really guide them towards doing a great event, making sure that it's successful, and then really making it a high quality event. And you can always compete on. It's much easier to compete on quality than cost, because cost is. I mean, anybody now can go out with a laptop and a little camera and a web camera and compete with you for $20. So you have to find a way that you're going to, and that's going to be everything. It's going to be how you dress when you show up. It's going to be how you act on the call. It's going to be to some degree your website. It's going to be your cards. Everything. Every time you touch a client, that is that is some kind of sales maneuver. Whether you think of it that way or not, it is. When you're having meetings with them, when you're sending them a PDF of what you're going to do, when you're sending, all those things represent how you occur for them, and they're making decisions about that. And you're always going to find some clients that really just want it to work. Like they just want it to, they need it to work. And the clients you want are the ones that want to do something great, but also want it to be great. The ones that are hiring at the lowest bidder they're basically wasting their money. They're throwing money away. I mean, if you have someone who's not producing a great product, if you're just checking off the mark that we made a video and we did a live stream, you can hire a lot of people for $10. But if you actually want it to have impact, that takes money and it takes logistics and takes time. Chris Fenwick.
Yeah, what I was going to say is kind of like what you're saying. We never discuss. I always tell people the money thing is not up for discussion. It's not like we just make up numbers. We know very well what it costs to be us, and that's why you're paying the number. And I'll tell people all the time, they'll say, well, this guy could do it cheaper. And I'll say, you know what? You should absolutely go do that. But I want you to remember that I'm still here next time. And I have no problem with somebody going someplace else because if they value what we can give them, they'll be back. Now, some people don't value it or just literally don't have the money, but they're going to pay one way or another, whether it's in pain or dollars. And I try to get them to pay dollars so they don't have to take the pain.
Right. And I think that a ROI on a useless event is not very high. And so when you paid $10 for someone who doesn't really know, I mean, we had one where we were underbid. I mean, on something, I gave someone a number that was, I thought, pretty aggressive actually. And they went with somebody else that was cheaper. And when they opened it up, it's a pop star. I'm not going to get into who it is, but it was a very, very large pop star who is poorly lit, who you can hear people talking in the background, of them getting ready for the show and telling him it's coming up. He looks horrible, sounds horrible. And that was their show, and I'm sure that the client afterwards wished that they had hired me, and so in live, because live, what I will say is that live is incredibly unforgiving. So someone who does it cheaply is bound. They might get it done the first time, but if the client then goes, "Oh, this is great, we're going to advertise more," and then do it, they're putting themselves, they're just building their house on sand. Chris Summers.
We used to say tape lives.
Yeah.
Once it's on tape, it's like, now we got to go watch it again.
Yeah. Chris Summers.
Film is forever as well. Just one quote that I heard before: "No one likes a cheap diamond," and that's it. I'll leave you guys at it.
Said by the person from South Africa. No one wants a cheap diamond. Yeah. So so that's definitely the case. And so anyway, that's what I would say. For that, it's to continue to work on your fundamentals. And making sure that you're producing something that's higher quality, and then look for and again, a lot of times, and we can talk. There's a whole hour. I think there is an hour we're planning next week or something about talking about the business of it. But making contacts and growing who you're talking to about it.
Yeah, that is the frustrating part, that that you're better, and then they still go with the other guy, and then it's just frustrating.
They can't, again, the thing is they can't see it. So, a lot of it's figuring out where you're going to go do that. I do test events. I do, again, great events for nonprofits oftentimes show up in front of people, a lot of people, that then go, oh, right, they do that, and so look for places. If you're not really busy, I have a bad habit, to my wife's chagrin, that I tend to fill my time a lot, so if I don't have a lot of work, I just fill it with things that I'm not getting paid for. And so but what that does is it keeps that energy going and it keeps churning, and things pop out of the other side of that. Chris Fenwick, and then we'll move on.
Yeah. Last thing I'll say, and I've said this many times, I work every day, and you just have to decide whether or not you want me working for you that day or for your competitor.
There you go. Elaine, what were you going to say? And then we're
going to when I dealt a lot, I was on staff with a church for years, for a decade. And and I ended up connecting with other churches. And the issue is to find yourself a supporter within their group and let them think about it. Give your information, give your offer, tell them how it's going to kind of work, the end product, what you're planning to do, and let them, don't pressure it, and just let them think about it. And then you'll find fans, and then they'll support you, your previous work, your this whole idea is just a little bit like you said, Alex, a couple of weeks ago, where if they came to you, they found out something good. So they have some good reference somewhere to start with, and let them think about it. And then if they want to go with the, I call it the Walmart race to the bottom. If they want to go with that lower bottom price, there's nothing you can do about it.
That's almost never.
Yeah,
that's almost never going to be a client that's going to turn out. They're going to
exactly.
just soak you dry. You know, and the thing
they'll
is
want
that,
more and more and more and more for less and less and less and less. So you just never win with them. So you just fire them. Instead of having to fire them, don't hire them. Just go move on.
Well, and then I do a lot of informational stuff. So I speak a lot. I mean, and we're speaking here together, but I speak a lot for ad agencies, you know, and if someone finds out in an agency or a creative company or whatever, and they're trying to figure out live for free, you know, I'll do a 1 hour talk, you know, for them of just, and there's no sale. Like I'm not, like I have no idea where that will go. I'm just having that conversation. I'm just putting it out into the wind. And I do a little dog and pony show and talk about live, and then that's it. And, you know, 80% of them don't ever come back, you know, and then the 20% that do are the ones that really need to do something interesting. And so, so you just have to also figure out how you're going to serve the market that you're in, making sure that they're educated on what looks good and doesn't look good, and what could be done. Because most clients don't even know what's possible. You know, we're in a brand new market. It's not like a known quantity. They don't even know what they could be doing. And so our job is to figure it out amongst ourselves, and then, you know, go out and share it with our clients. I'm going to move on.
Yeah, you have to educate the customer. That's all.
Absolutely. Jeffrey Rise says, "Hi Alex, what are your thoughts on resolution versus frame per second settings? For example, do you prefer to record at 4K 30 or 1080p 60 if those are your choices?" I guess I would say it depends on the content, you know, and you guys can jump in, but I would tend to lean towards, you know, if it's sports or high motion, then I'm going to tend to lean towards frame rate. If it is something that isn't moving fast, a corporate event or other things, I would tend to lean towards resolution. So it just depends on what's happening on the frame and whether it's going to make sense. Games, obviously 60 frames a second is probably more valuable. In general, 1080p is still good enough for a lot of things. So you can kind of lean into that direction. I like having a 4K source later because it does look a lot better. We've shot some stuff, you know, some really high profile events that we just chose to turn on to 4K, and it was good to have the original record there. So that may be valuable in the future. So, you know, so I guess you really have to look at the content, you know, as far as frame rate goes, what kind of content that you're doing. Does anyone else have any other opinions about that? I mean, I think there's no reason to throw extra frames downstream if someone's sitting there. If it's talking heads sitting around a table doing 60 frames a second, it's less it's more bits per pixel than resolution. So if I'm recording, 4K or 1080p, but when you're streaming, just remember that, you know, when you do 60 frames a second, you're now burning up twice as much bandwidth, and usually that's a limited amount. So you're getting 6 megs and you're spreading it across 60 frames or 4 megs, you're spreading across 60 frames instead of 30 frames, which means each frame is going to be lower quality. And so you want to think about bits per pixel a lot. Jeffrey Powers?
Yeah, doing a lot of the YouTube stuff, I find that doing 60 frames a second actually makes it a little bit crisper. But when it comes to live, I always do my stuff 30 frames a second and then throw it to a recording device of my choosing at 60 frames. That way I can later upload it and make it look a lot better. I know that Leo and Twit, they do low bit rate and high frame rate to get that crispness looking feel on their videos.
Well, I think the crispness is less motion blur because it's you know, at 180 degrees it'll be, I guess technically it would be twice as crisp. so I mean that'd be my guess. I don't understand why it would be any more crisp other than that. Sky, go ahead.
So I have a client that has uploaded to YouTube, and every 2 seconds, it gets blurry and then goes sharp. Gets blurry and then goes sharp. I believe it was shot on an iPad. So I'm wondering if it's a long GOP or iframe issue.
Autofocus. It's autofocus.
Really?
Yeah, if the center of focus, it's
well,
probably
the file itself on my laptop looks great. I uploaded 2 different versions of it to YouTube, and it looks like a compression.
And did you and do you know what you set your keyframes to when you
again
when you rendered it out?
The file was handed to me from iMovie, so I don't know the whole backstory of the heritage. Sorry.
Yeah, I would re-encode with a different keyframe setting, something with many more keyframes.
Yeah. I'd probably reconform it at. I would try to reconform it at 60 2-second GOPS to just see what it looks like.
Yeah.
But it could be something where it's doing natural GOPS, and that can be something that YouTube doesn't like.
Yeah.
So I would re-encode. When clients send me
from the
footage,
source,
from whatever source they have, the best source you can get. So if they have a real source, even if they have MP4, I have to admit that I tend to, when I get stuff, I tend to re-encode everything because I just don't trust.
Well,
I like my clients. I just don't trust them. So we'll get a whole bunch of files that we have to do playback for. And what I know is that I need time to conform, because I'm just going to conform everything to the same thing. I'm going to throw it all into, for me, compressor. And I have a setting that I know plays out. For instance, if I'm playing out on HyperDeck, I have a setting that works on the HyperDeck. I don't care what you send me. It's going to go into compressor, and I'm going to go away. And I'm going to come back, and it's all going to be in the format that I know is going to work. If I'm going to upload to YouTube, I have a YouTube setting. I know that works. I know that it's going to be a fast start. It's going to do all the things that I want it to do, and I push it through there. Unless I'm in a horrible, unless I'm in a horrible rush, that they hand me something. Usually, people's ability to do compression is low.
Well,
my
civilian client handed it to me from iMovie, and I think he said he used a preset YouTube setting, but maybe not. But we'll try to go back to the well.
Yeah, I would try reconforming. Yeah, absolutely. Colin? Oh no, go ahead, Colin.
My other different question.
Your other different question.
Other different question. Yes. Well, so we sort of ran out of time with this yesterday, and I was asking a question in chat that I got an answer from John Tatulis on that probably could use some further discussion, and that was usage of Ravenna versus Dante with respect to network standards conformity. A network engineer will tell you something that conforms to network standards is superior by definition. And one of the discussion points was, well, if you want to get free Dante, you use Ravenna. Has anyone experimented with this in terms of Ravenna's reliability across a pre-existing network, to the extent that you don't have the ability to deploy a private network for your audio servicing?
I don't know anybody that uses Ravenna. Like, the whole thing is just like, that's the
we
hard
can
part.
Play with it if you want, Colin.
I haven't had time yet. I'm trying to get some feedback.
Ravenna, I just kind of view Ravenna as like Ultranet or what, all these other things. It's an attempt from a company to not have to pay for the Dante licensing. And the problem is that at this point, if Ravenna had come out first, or had come out early, or it had been an early reaction, I think they probably could have done really well. But I think that at this point, Dante works so well, and it works across, with so many people and so many devices and such a standard, that it would be extremely hard to get it to move at this point, because it just works, and there's a lot of us that the problem you get into at this point is that when someone does something other than Dante, you're just like, what the?
It's considered to be unprofessional at this point.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, you don't have anything. I mean, Brian will disagree with me, but I view anything like Dante as far as passing audio. There's analog, and then there's embedded on SDI, and there's Dante, and then anything else after that, I'm just kind of like Matty I just feel like you used to work in a broadcast truck. You
Well,
know,
my
like,
entire
I
adult
get
life has been based
you don't-
around open source software. So
I know, I
I
understand.
took
I
great
understand.
offense at the idea that,
But
that it was.
it's just they just
not
came
a
out too
thing.
late. They're
Yeah.
too late, you know, and it's not that it couldn't have worked. In fact, it probably would have been a huge problem for Dante had they moved faster. But by the time Ravenna was released, Dante was already a standard, and it's just not, you know. And again, I think that it also helps. The advantage that non-open source projects have is that they tend to have somebody making money on it, which means that there's more money being spent on it, you know, to develop it, unless they reach critical mass.
argue that
Reach critical mass. And when
that's
they reach
not-
critical
yeah.
mass, it's fine. You get a lot of people, but without critical mass, you're dead in the water.
It's
You know,
not-
an
it's
open
not
source
there
project
yet.
because there's no money. Beju,
Yeah.
you
Well,
were gonna
that
say
that
something
sheds
there?
some light on John Tatulis' answer, which was if the competitive landscape changes, the Dante developers will put more effort into network compliance.
Right.
That makes
No,
a lot of sense there. Okay,
absolutely.
thanks.
Beju?
Yeah, I was just commenting that thing is those people who don't want to pay for a Dante license, they're just using generic AES67 right now. So you're seeing a lot of devices which didn't want to put a Dante chip in. They've got AES67 compatibility, and most Dante gear is back updated to be compatible with that. So you're basically getting that there anyway.
Right. And Leland?
I just wanted to make a comment with regards to the frame rate versus the resolution. When you're streaming, you
Nope,
would
we're already-
first.
We're already
Sorry?
past that. We're already past that.
All right,
Sorry,
whatever.
we gotta keep
Leave that to me
Barry,
the
you're
other
on.
day. Just go with it.
Just bring it up. I want to keep.
No,
keep
it's
moving.
fine.
So
Text me, Leland.
take it to once we move on to the next subject. Just put it on. Just take it to Discord.
Okay.
Paul Edison Lamb said that you probably already answered this, but what's the best webcam for Zoom? Is that currently available now? I have no idea what is the best webcam that's currently available. The currently available part is the part that I don't have an answer for. I think the two best webcams for Zoom is the C920 and the StreamCam, with the Brio being another one that's good. They're all made by Logitech, and none of them are available. Has anyone? And then there's of course the Precision HD from Cisco, which is amazing, but selling for $1,000 each, I think, right now. So does anyone have any other suggestions for external webcams that they think are good? Elaine?
The Microsoft LiveCam, I've been using that on a couple of clients because I couldn't procure the C920. Works okay.
Works okay.
Yeah,
I find that that their frame rate and their motion blur is a little odd. Like it's just slow. You know, like they've taken this thing that if you move around at all, you just see you see a lot of motion blur going on, because I think they're trying to use it to hide the fact that they're doing low frame rate. So they, and so what you get by that, and I think that what they're doing is opening it up to a full 360 app, shutter, is it just looks very blurry, but you get better light sensitivity, for the same cost, and you can do they're doing slightly lower frame rates, but I feel like that's the problem.
For headshots, they were like, I've got about half a dozen on that now on the teachers group that we work with, and that's what they're using because that's the only thing we could procure at the time.
Right. No,
and
that's
they're
the
like,
problem.
Canadian dollar, they're less than $50, so that was cheap for them.
I think the Logitechs at this point are back ordered by thousands.
Yeah.
It's because
we should warn people that there are a lot of clones of the C290 out there. A lot of vendors are selling them the lookalikes, and they aren't a Logitech. But one thing that's possible is to use your smartphone, use your iPhone or Android in an app, because they have really good cameras on them, and that's a good stopgap until the supplies.
How do you connect it to your web? As a USB, you have to have a cable or something, or
they have apps you have an app on the device, an Android or iOS.
So that becomes your Zoom. Or
you can use like the
NDI
HX camera, and then an NDI virtual camera on the inside. You can use your phone for that, and there'll be a little bit higher latency than you would have with the regular one, but it's I will say that we have to remember that webcams are sold in tens of thousands, and phones are sold in tens of millions. The last time I heard, on 60 Minutes, there were at least 200 engineers at Apple only working on the camera. So I think that the quality of the camera on the phone is much higher than the webcams, all of them, because there's just so much more money being dedicated to them. And they can be processed, they're processed. So it is better to do it on the phone. The problem, for instance, using it on the phone on Zoom, for instance, is that it does a full aperture. It grabs the full sensor rather than scaling up. And so the problem you get into then is you don't get a full frame every time you use an iOS device. When with Skype and everybody else, they just figure out, oh yeah, I can scale it up. so Zoom hasn't figured that out yet.
Just to clarify, so basically they'll use, instead of using a computer with a webcam or an HDMI input, they'll be using their phone or their iPad to do the meeting.
You can actually attach your phone to the computer via NDI cam. So you can actually use your phone as a
just a camera.
As a camera. I'm going to test it one of these mornings about to do that. Yeah, Michael Tucker.
Yeah, it's possibly there's a live view solo cam for the iPhone as well. There's not too much around for the Android at the moment. We were having a chat about that yesterday, I think it was.
the Epic Cam EPOC cam will show up on your Mac as a camera. So
right, yeah, and I think that the best one that I've seen so far has been I haven't played with the NDI virtual cam, but as far as getting my phone to my computer, the NDI HX camera from NewTek, which I think is free at the moment, has been. I just couldn't believe it. I opened it up with Memo Live, and it was on. It looked great, and the signal was great over Wi-Fi. I was kind of amazed that even worked. Brian, go ahead. I'll come to you, Colin, after that.
Yeah, I was actually in the chat. Mark just said exactly what I was saying. I was trying to use the Echo camera, or however you say it, and yeah, Zoom literally broke that on the latest update of Zoom. So it does not work unless you dig into the code and unsign it and fix it.
You can also go back to 4.6.8, and so it'll still work. So those are there as well. But yeah,
a little workaround I found.
Hold on one second. I'll come to you, Jeff. Colin?
Yeah, at least for Android, there are and I don't remember the exact name, but there are a number of apps out there for Android phones. They were called something like USB Webcam, and they're effectively exactly what they sound like. You connect your phone via USB, you reduce the latency. There's usually a desktop app that does an endpoint thing of some kind. But it's not using the wireless. It also gives you the advantage because you got to charge your phone anyway while you're doing this, because you're using it at a
charge
higher
your phone
level.
and have a webcam. No, that's great. So definitely USB webcam.
Yeah, make sure you got a long cable for it, but it makes a huge difference. And if you got to deploy something like this and you've got multiple cameras, if you've got your down-facing camera, obviously use your phone for that, because you're going to reduce your overall distance.
Oh, that's great. Hey, George, and then Jeff.
Autorama currently has a few webcams in stock, but they made a generic camera. I'm not sure how good it is, but it is 1920 by 1080 and USB 1.0.
Yeah, no, I definitely want to buy some of the generic ones just to see how they look, and I just haven't decided to spend the money on buying ones that I know I probably won't use. So that's been what's holding me back. Jeffrey Powers. Oh, yeah, there's two Jeffreys right over top of each other. Jeffrey Powers first, and then Jeff fourth one.
Three things really quick. First of all, I did test one of those Amazon cameras, $150. They're like consumer cameras. They're actually webcams in a consumer camera case that hook up via USB.
Yep.
They're okay. And so they're good. They're about $150 to $200. Then you have the whole Canon bringing out that beta EOS utility for certain.
Has anyone used that?
Cameras. I've actually been testing it myself.
Is it working?
I have the T6i, and it works. What it does is it ends up doing a 720p video, and it's got a border around it, but I just crop it out and it works fine. So,
but that's a bummer. Like that, really? So I'm just saying, like that's the problem. Is like, okay, we can do it, but now you're going to be the one person like in Zoom that has a black border around.
Yeah, but right? this is the low end camera. I bet you the ADDs and stuff like that, they're all gonna be fine. So.
Well, we don't know. We don't know if there's a black border on all of it.
What camera are you using now, Jeffrey?
I'm using the Sony AX700, which is my main camera. Third one, really quick. If you want to do have some fun projects, put together a Pi, get a Pi camera. Those things, you can get tons of those right now.
Right. There's a new isn't there like a new Pi thing with
There
for
is a new
cameras
Pi
specifically with
camera,
sensor?
and
Yeah.
I was going to ask a question about there was a question asked of me in Discord about this, using the new Pi camera, which has mountable lenses, but only supports currently the two lenses that are available specifically for it. I don't think there's an interface for standard lenses yet. It goes for $50, and the camera goes for $50, or no, for 25, and the lenses go for 25.
Awesome. Jeffrey? Oh, go ahead. I'm going to keep moving because I'm going to close
very
this one.
quickly.
Go ahead. Yep.
There are cheaper Pi cameras that you could use. There's a smaller 4K camera. You don't want to use any of those as streaming cameras. That was where I was leading.
Yeah. Don't use those.
The newer one you might get away with, but it seems
absolutely.
like it's going to be more trouble than it's worth. The question that was asked of me relates to using it as a witness camera, which we need to touch on in the next hour.
Oh, sounds good.
You post the link.
Jeffrey Orthwine.
So yeah, well, first of all, I'm very interested to see if that CAN utility is functional. It's Windows only right now. Is that that's my understanding? Did a Mac version come out?
I don't know.
Okay, well, maybe I'll test that someday. But the other workaround that I found, and it is a workaround, is cam twist can be very helpful here because of the idiosyncrasies with Zoom and your camera model and how it's getting in. I found that cam twist can kind of just, if you can get in there and grab the signal, then you can route it out to a bunch of services without the, because Zoom, broke a lot of things, but it'll still see a cam twist camera. So that can solve some problems.
So the new Zoom will still see cam twist?
You know what? I don't know because I haven't upgraded past 4.6.8.
Right. Yeah.
I should test to see. I mean, cam twist will introduce its own problem. So
yeah, no. I think, but I think that'll be cam twist has been around forever. Like that was the original. How do we get things into Skype camera?
The new Zoom will not see cam twist.
Yeah, there you go. Philip Oler said, so ran a test on Teams live meeting captions and translation to Spanish. Not accurate enough to be used. Looking for other options, please. So
Google Meet.
Google Meet is probably, well, right now I would say the Google Meet's, I don't know about the translation, but I will say the transcription of it, the live transcription is the best I've ever seen. As far as a machine learning process, I'm stunned. That's all I got to say. Like I've used it in meetings. I always turn it on just to entertain myself to see how well it'll do. Sometimes it's more entertaining than the meeting. So anyway, but what I will say is that a couple things about that is, one, we have to kind of manage our expectations of what translation is. Even humans are not super accurate at doing that. So when you're comparing the quality of translation, definitely compare it to the fact that, there's going to be a lot of different ways to interpret something. And we have to remind our customers when we work with translation that they really have to think about, the idea is getting across, the exact words. There's a lot of open ideas of, someone says something, there's like 4 different words that mean that, and some people are going to think that that's totally what they want, and some people are going to completely think that's the wrong way to say it. And that's the nature of translation. And so we just want to make sure that we're clear. The other thing is if you're doing translation against a technical event or a medical event or a legal event, you have to do a couple things. One is you have to be able to have a library that you can train. And so I don't think that Teams does this, but there are other ones that we've used where you can put in a library, like these are words you're trying to solve towards, and then these are ones you never want to use. And so you can put those into some of the libraries to make that work. But when you're dealing with a person, you also make sure that they know what it is. But yeah, it's you definitely want to know that in general, especially machine-driven translation, you're really just hoping people get the gist of the story, not that they're going to get the same feel that they had if you're trying to do it live. Live is just a certain layer of inaccuracy because someone's doing it on the fly, just kind of churning through that. So just keep that in mind. I don't think that there's any, other than Meet, but on a Microsoft side, I don't think there's any better solution than that. And again, Meet may or may not solve what you're looking at. Blue Melnick says, morning all, question about embedded chat on a live stream page. We're using YouTube live for a short broadcast this afternoon and working through what to use for chat. What do you recommend? Does anyone have anything third-party chat systems that they recommend around a YouTube? Go ahead, Leland.
There's one that could be incorporated outside of vMix, actually, which is, well, outside of the platform on PC anyway, which is vMix Social. That's part and parcel because you can actually expose the screen of the software on a web browser, which would allow people to just use that portion of the software to input the actual comments that were coming in from either Twitter on a hashtag, Facebook comments, YouTube comments, or any IRC, and then just capture that window in the browser for the actual
Well, but I
feed
think that what he's looking for, I mean, I think it's a standalone chat client. And then the other question,
IO has one as a multi-chat client, and that's the only one I'm aware of that even functions well enough that you could use it. It's an overlay in a web browser that has a green screen function to it, so it can be just brought in as an overlay.
I don't think, but I think that what he's looking for is something that people can actually chat with. It's not, hasn't, like the idea is a web, and Blue, you can let us know.
Oh, you want to embed it in the feed?
So the idea is that you're just ignoring the YouTube chat, I think. You know, is, and so, yeah, it's embedded chat on a live stream page. So it's really putting chat on a web page that is not YouTube. That is just people.
Yes, there is. We've done it with Livebox. That's one component where it's similar to that nature, where you're literally just streaming out with embed codes to your website. So you have an embed code for an iframe for the video going out, and you have an embed code for
I know that there are some. He's just looking for which one. Does anyone have any opinions of which one that? Yeah, go ahead, George.
I just put it in the chats. I use Chatwe for most of my external chats, and it's embeddable.
What's it called again?
Chatwe.
Chatwe.
Yeah. So
okay.
It's embeddable, and you could either pay or free, but that's the one I use.
Perfect. Ernest Floyd says, what type of liability insurance do you need when doing this type of work? It depends on the size of the client, and it depends on who your client is. So if you're working with a production company, a lot of times the production company is going to have its own rider that's going to cover everyone that they hire, you know, to go through that. So they may have the insurance that's required to do that. And if now obviously there's some liability insurance that a general company needs to have. But then the other issue you get into is that when you're actually the service provider for, let's say, an agency, they're not going to have the insurance that is required. So if you walk into a large facility, they're going to ask for $2 million or $5 million of liability, $1 million of loss, you know, those types of numbers. And so you need to then have larger insurance. And it is one of the ways that to get back to Doug's discussion earlier, one of the ways that you distinguish yourself from other folks is having the liability insurance that's required to get these jobs done, or at least know how you're going to get it so that you can quickly provide it to clients. As you start to work with large corporate clients, they're going to ask for that. And the moment you say, I'll get back to you, you've lost a job, because they just know that you're not serious if you don't have that insurance or the ability to generate it very quickly. Chris, go ahead.
You can get
got to raise your hand. Got it. I'm going to get tighter because we got so many people here. Chris Fenwick.
Yeah, I'll say one thing about the insurance thing. Having those things like done and understood can really save you. We had a producer drop in Vegas to do a job, and it was unorganized on their end. And all of a sudden somebody said, if you don't have a $2 million rider, we can't let you do it. And she called the office. Actually, she went on her laptop to our insurance company and boop, 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 and printed out a PDF in like 15 minutes. And they went, oh, okay, thank you.
But that's the kind of stuff when you're talking about distinguishing yourself, knowing how to do that and being able to manage that like that is a big deal when it comes to getting larger clients, because that's where the small providers and the large providers start to get separated, is the ability to deal with that scale. Elaine.
I teach the commercial insurance course for both Canada and the States for an organization.
Yeah.
And you can get a binder that's restricted to just a small project. So you don't have to spend a whole pile of money. And like Chris said, 15 minutes on the call with your broker, they'll have a PDF in the email and you're covered. And you pay it, within right away or within 30 days, put it on your credit card, whatever, a few $100 and you're covered. And also it'll save you. Like I tell people, you either have insurance or you get yourself in a garage, you make sure you have a house for sale sign ready. Because if you lose that's a house that goes. And try to explain that to your wife that you didn't want to spend $200 on a short policy. You have to sell the house because you got sued and
No,
you
we're
lost.
living in the trailer. Sorry, honey.
That's my last word on insurance. Get insured. Doesn't cost that much. People are either underinsured or overinsured, but very few are overinsured.
Well, and the other thing to think about is in California they've almost required it at this point. You really want to think about limited liability corporations, and other versions of corporations that separate you from your company. It's a little bit more work and it's a lot more overhead for you to manage it. But as you start to manage your process, it makes a big difference. To be able to, if something like that goes bad, you lose your whole business. You don't lose your house. But that requires some work on our end, and we should put this in. If someone's interested in the second hour of those kinds of things, put it in the second hour in Discord. And Elaine, we're gonna do one on insurance. All right,
education
so Elaine,
and insurance are my specialty.
Okay. So we're gonna bring Elaine in. We'll find a time in the near future to do that because that's a great one for people to get. Let's see. Doug Dalton asked, did BMD discontinue the web presenter now that the ATEM Mini Pro does something similar? And the answer is you can't find it because everybody wants it, but it's definitely not discontinued. So the reason that you can't find web presenters is because they are they're like webcams. They're under extreme demand, and the minis are under extreme demand as well. But the web presenters are still the best way to I know that I can get my external camera or my entire production system, into something that needs a webcam. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. In fact, we still have seen better reliability into certain apps like Skype are working better with webcam than necessarily the Mini. We had some issues with the Mini. George, did we figure that out? Weren't you having the trouble with the Mini going into Skype?
It's still behaving the same way. So I've left the deck link quad in line.
Right. So
yeah, it's still working.
Yeah. There's a lot of it's super important. As a note to everybody, it's super important not to do discussions in the Q&A because it makes it really hard for me. So you need to do chat in the chat and the chat in the chat and questions in the question, because I keep on looking down and there's like a whole bunch of comments and I can't deal with that. So too many things for me to deal with. There's so many questions. And as a note, if people feel like I'm cutting you off, it's because I'm looking at the Q&A and I'm looking at the time and I'm trying to get through as much of the Q&A as we can through the time. So when you start wanting to say something, you're gonna, now that we're starting to have the adjustment that we're making with more people right now we've got 188 people in the group, that we're gonna just need to tighten our answers or our comments. So you just want to think through them a little bit and be able to say them in a concise way and not kind of find your way there. So anyway, it's just the nature of our evolution. So anyway, so any high quality phone camera used as webcam. Okay, I think we got into that as far as using that thing. By the way, A. Mitchells asks if there's an Ultrix webinar in an hour. Is anyone going to the Ultrix webinar in about an hour? Maybe that was a while ago. No, that's 8 o'clock. So we're all going to be here. So I probably not. Jeff Francis says, need help from the hive mind. I've been tasked with writing the proposals to outfit 3 performance spaces with streaming capabilities. School of Music at a state university, 200 seat, 500 seat, 2,000 seat. Performing Arts Center, primarily live, mostly acoustic music, chamber music, jazz, orchestra. Budget and staffing are not yet determined, but will be limited. SDI or NDI? Are there small NDI hardware switchers? Is the question there. And then what cameras? I'm thinking several PTZs with the capability to add others. What switcher? Where are the sharp objects that I don't even know about? We're gonna have a lot of different opinions here.
Sorry, that's a big question. I know.
No, we're gonna have a lot of different opinions as far as that goes. I mean, the problem for me is that, and people who've been here long enough know that I have, at one point I had probably 30 Blackmagic switchers, and I'm totally sold on the ecosystem. That I can shade the cameras and I can move the cameras, and it's all in one unified experience. And I have open APIs that as I want to change things, I can change them. So I want to control the cameras in some other way. I want to control the switchers or the routers. I want to put buttons on them and make them go. And it's all hardware that doesn't crash. And it's it's an ecosystem that I would tend to lean towards. And I would also, for that many people or that facilities that big, the hard part is that you want to think about what's compelling for the web. If you're trying to check the mark off saying we now have web streaming, there's a lot of little cameras and with little sensors that you can put up there that's going to check the mark off. If you want it to be a compelling experience for the viewer, then you start having to be a little bit more bespoke as far as how you build it, in my opinion, where you want better sensors, you want other things that are there. I will say, as far as PTZs go, I think that I believe it's the two best PTZs that are all in one that I've worked with so far. I believe it's the Sony BRC 1000. Those are the new 1-inch 4K chips, and then the Panasonic 150s, which are their new 4K Panasonic. The advantage of the Panasonics that I'm really curious about is connecting them to Unreal. Because they send telemetry data back. So I don't think that affects you at all, but it's something that I'm super interested in. As I've heard people talk about it, and now I'm starting to see it, coming into place. And so I'm interested in that. I think if you go to NDI, then you're really thinking about probably, for the size that you're doing, either a vMix or a TriCaster, are the options that you're going to start going down, which I think would totally be valid, in those areas. So it's something to think about. It's not, again, it's, it's not what I build, but it's definitely a doable solution.
Yeah, I'm
go ahead,
familiar
Jeffrey.
with SDI and not NDI. That's why I'm asking that.
I think NDI could, in a well-designed space with a well-designed architecture, I think the NDI could work really well. And it is easy in the sense that you throw a Cat5 down there and you've got a connection, and so I think that those could work well, but I think that you're probably moving towards a vMix or a TriCaster solution at that point for the switch. Jeffrey Powers.
Yeah, first of all, I was a music major at a major university, and I've been in those pits where, and of course, this is years before we had PTZ cameras and NDI and all that other stuff. So having good cameras that really get in on the instruments is key right there for the viewer to catch on things. What I'd love to see is if you can fashion something like the football overhead wire cams and bring those in. So instead of having like a drone, because you can't have a drone fly inside of a major concert hall, you'd have them just zoom in on a wire coming in close to hands and to music and to the conductor and go from there.
Yeah. And the one thing that Alex Olegnowitz, I'll get better at that one because Alex is here often enough. He said you can't use NDI for IMAG, and I assume that's because NDI is a higher latency as far as than your SDI will be. And I don't know that for sure, but I think that that definitely could be the case. You have one of the things that we work with if we're doing IMAG is absolute lowest latency, genlock everything to get that half frame back. Obviously, you really have to tighten that with every little bit. So NDI could be a little, and a TriCaster vMix will have higher latency through the system than almost any other, and then a regular switcher, just because there's more going on there. So if you're going to use it for IMAG, I know that I've talked to some folks that have had streaming. It works great. TriCasters for IMAG have been problematic because of that. Because of the lag, if you're going to use that. If you're only web streaming, then that's not really an issue. If you're sending back some of those cameras for IMAG, it is something to consider. Stephen Kimbrough.
It's when the client wants something that looks like Austin city limits, but they have only a $20,000 budget. That's where you get into trouble quick.
Yep.
One of the things that wasn't asked here or wasn't clear, and Jeff, since you're here, is this a greenfield deployment or are you retrofitting something?
These are old buildings, new install. I mean, some of them have like basic single camera capture web stream capability, but we want to, as we have to reduce audiences for social distancing, we need to make a more compelling web stream.
And again, I would say that, again, I think that you'd find that you can also start very simply and very inexpensively with, a Blackmagic pipeline where you have a handful of things and you keep on adding to it. And it's just a really good ecosystem. I think that you can get away with a lot of other things. I just think that you'll end up having more control, and for the same price, for that price. I think small PTZ cameras just don't look very good. I think that's I think that's the, I'd rather have them fixed or put one or two of them on something like a telemetrics or some other head where I can move it around, and have one or two that are able to reproduce, and then have a lot of other ones that are fixed, that are really high quality for the viewer, rather than having everything moving around if I had to. Yeah, go ahead. Michael Tucker, and then we're going to move on. Oh, Michael Tucker, and then Tucker Dragu, just because it's fun to jump from one Tucker to another.
Just
Anyway,
quickly,
Michael
the Blackmagic is probably the easiest for the kids to try and learn on anyway.
Yeah, I mean I can get someone up on a Blackmagic switcher in about an hour, where they can cut a show, and then it's just talking about how to make it better and add graphics and do other things. That doesn't take very long, and if you can lock out a lot of stuff that makes it work. But again, there's a lot of capabilities. Again, if you're not doing IMAG, there's a lot of capabilities in vMix and TriCaster to look at. But the other thing about the Blackmagic stuff is for one TriCaster, you can buy a basic switcher and some cameras. So you can get a little further down the path. Tucker? No, I can't hear you.
Yes, sorry about that.
Yep.
The recommendation for static cameras, as far as if cost becomes a thing, looking at the small Marshall cameras have really a fantastic image quality with a limited feature set, but it is all in the sensor and it's all in the lens. So I would highly, highly, highly recommend for statics those. We have kits of them, and they are money for static lockdowns.
I have to look at them. I think I'm just picking the wrong Marshalls. Chris Summers, I'll let you say something about that.
I have a question for Tucker, because I was actually I didn't want to jump in earlier to make too much noise, but Tucker and I were talking about those particular Marshall cameras. Tucker, when you say lockdown camera, obviously the camera's locked off, but how about the scene, it's imaging? Can that be high action? How is it in terms of shutter angle and response of high motion?
Yeah, totally good. I mean, I'm using the SDI output option.
I'd love to.
Of them.
So I'd love to have. Can you in Discord post which model number you're doing, because then we'll take a look at it. Because what I'd love to do is do head to head with like a Blackmagic micro, and just see what the image quality is going to look like compared to the two.
I mean, you're looking at a $400 camera versus a $1,200 camera. So,
but I mean, once you do an install, because one of the things I'm looking at from a logistical perspective is you're going to pay a little bit more, but then I'm also able to remote shade it. I'm able to add lenses. I'm able to, there's a whole bunch of things that kind of tie into that process.
Right. It says 4K 60, so.
Right. This is the last question for the hour. I have an ATEM Mini coming next week based on my Mac Break Weekly comment. Entry-level camera recommendations. I know it's been covered. Little Canon G20s are great for HDMI inputs. I will always recommend getting something that you can shade with. Like if you're going to do anything live, being able to remote shade. When I got started, I didn't know what remote shading was, and I thought that all these guys were silly, and why would you need to do that? I can just change the camera and everything else, but it's money. Like being able to be in your switcher and being able to shade your camera from your switcher is the thing. And it transforms everything that you do. I would not build a camera system for live that I couldn't shade. Like that is, that's how I, and it's, to me, it's not, there's no option there to not being able to shade. So whatever you're doing when whatever switcher you buy, whether it's a TriCaster or a vMix or an ATEM or whatever, and whatever camera you buy, know that you need to have those interrelated so that you can shade them, and that you have to have or you're gonna have to buy a separate shading unit for it, or you're really gonna cap off your quality. Like you know, it takes you a long time to get the cameras to match. It takes you never get all the exposures correctly. You know, when anything's moving around, it's just one of those key things. If you have some way to externally shade it and you have some system for it, just know that putting up a bunch of cameras and plugging them into your switcher will not scale very, very far, very fast. But if you're not going to do that, then, you know, I have a bunch of G20s that I like, G10s. I don't think they're very expensive anymore. They look great. So, you know, that you can do a lot of things entry level that'll be fine. But that'd be my 2 cents. Chris, go ahead. Last comment, and then we're going to.
I actually have to step out. I have some fires
fine.
I need to deal with, so I'm going to give you back control.
All right, fine. Be that way.
Sorry. The real world calls.
Go, Mickey.
Yeah, just wondering if you want to throw that to me.
I was just about to say, Mickey, how are you?